Sometimes the biggest stories aren't found in some dusty old book. Sometimes they're hidden in the most ordinary objects imaginable. Today, we're going to be historical detectives, and we're going to follow a trail of clues hidden inside a single, unassuming sheet of paper.
So here it is, our central piece of evidence. It's a sales contract from Iceland, and it's dated 1437. Now, on the surface, it looks kind of boring, right? Just an old legal document. But trust me, this single sheet of paper has traveled a long, long way, and it's holding a pretty big secret about its journey.
And here is our first major clue. If you hold this very same sheet up to the light, something incredible appears, embedded in the very fibers of the page. It's called a watermark. In this case, it's the tail of a dragon. This one faint image, this is the key that's going to unlock this whole story.
So that's the big question, isn't it? How can we possibly use this one little clue, a dragon's tail, to solve a 600-year-old mystery? Well, to find the answer, we need to zoom out a bit. We need to understand the revolutionary technology that is paper itself.
So let's start at the very beginning. Because before paper existed, just writing something down was a serious challenge. The invention of paper wasn't just some minor convenience. It was a total and complete game changer for all of human civilization.
I mean, seriously, try to imagine writing a book in ancient China. Your options were basically 1. Carve everything onto heavy, clunky bamboo strips that you'd need a cart to move around. Or 2, you could write on beautiful, lightweight silk, which was astronomically expensive. Yeah, neither of those was really practical for everyday use.
And then the solution arrives, around 105 AD. It's traditionally credited to a Chinese court official, a guy named Kai Lun, and he develops this method for creating what we call true paper. The genius of it was taking cheap, throwaway materials like old rags, hemp, and tree bark, mashing them all up into a pulp, and then pressing that pulp into these thin, flexible, and most importantly, affordable sheets.
Now you might be thinking, hey, what about Egyptian papyrus? And that's a great point, because the distinction is crucial. Papyrus was made by layering thin strips of a plant, almost like laminating them together. But true paper, that's made from fibers that are completely broken down and then reformed into a brand new uniform sheet. That process made it way stronger, smoother, and just so much more versatile.
The scholar Qian Xuanhun put it perfectly. The key word here is maceration. You're fundamentally changing the properties of the material. You're not just arranging old plant parts, you're literally creating an entirely new material from scratch. And this brilliant innovation, it was about to begin an absolutely epic journey.
So China has this incredible new technology. The question is, how did it get from there to the rest of the world? It certainly wasn't fast, but its slow, creeping spread would end up fueling intellectual revolutions wherever it landed.
What's really wild is just how long this all took. I mean, it took over 600 years for the technology just to get from China to the Islamic world, and then another 400 years after that to finally reach Europe. That's a 1,000-year journey for one of the most important ideas in all of human history.
But the impact was just immense. The Islamic Golden Age was pretty much powered by paper. It was so much cheaper and easier to get than parchment, and that allowed for the creation of these massive libraries. Cities like Baghdad became these incredible centers of knowledge, with streets literally lined with hundreds of bookshops, all thanks to this new material.
And when paper finally made it to Europe and papermaking really took off, the economic effect was staggering. In 13th century Italy, the price just plummeted. It was suddenly just 1/6 the cost of parchment. All of a sudden, knowledge wasn't just for the ultra-wealthy anymore. This democratization of information really set the stage for the Renaissance. But here's the thing. European papermakers didn't just copy the technology, they added a crucial innovation of their own. And this innovation is what is going to allow us to crack our 600-year-old case. They invented the watermark. First showing up in Italy around 1282, a watermark is basically a maker's mark. It's like a fingerprint for paper. It was a way for a paper mill to brand its product, to show off its quality and prove where it came from, just like the dragon's tail in our document. And the process was so simple, it's brilliant. Paper makers would just bend a little piece of wire into a shape, say a dragon, and attach it to the mesh screen they used to make the paper. So when the watery pulp was laid out on the screen, a slightly thinner layer would settle over that wire. Once it dried, that thinner area was more translucent, creating the watermark. And you can see that whole process right here in this old illustration of a European paper mill. You can see the big vats of pulp, the presses, the craftsmen working with the molds.
It was in a workshop that looked almost exactly like this one, where a watermarked paper was born.
Okay, now we have all the tools we need. We understand paper, we know how it traveled the world, and we know all about the crucial invention of the watermark. It is time to go back to that document from Iceland and finally solve this thing.
So let's lay out all the evidence. We have the contract from Iceland from 1437 with its Dragon's Tail watermark. Now here's the clincher. There are these massive historical archives that allow researchers to match specific watermark designs to the exact mills that made them. And this particular dragon, it's been traced to paper mills in the Netherlands that were operating between 1411 and 1431.
And there it is, the verdict. Case closed. That piece of paper, used to record a simple farm sale in northern Iceland, actually began its life in a paper mill nearly 2,000 kilometers away in the Netherlands. That little watermark acted as a tiny, permanent passport, telling us the story of its origin hundreds of years later.
You know, this single sheet of paper tells a much bigger story. It's a story about technology, about trade, about just how interconnected the medieval world really was, and it's a story that kept evolving long after our dragon watermark was made.
So, fast forward to the 19th century, and the whole process gets industrialized. You've got steam-powered machines and the use of wood pulp instead of old rags, and that made paper unbelievably cheap and accessible to absolutely everyone. This is what fueled mass literacy, the rise of newspapers. It essentially created the information-rich modern world we live in today.
And that really is the key takeaway here. A document story isn't just in the words written on its surface. The very material itself, its fibers, its feel, its hidden watermarks, it contains a deep history of technology, of economics, and of human connection. The story is written in the paper.
All of which leads to a final, fascinating question for you. We solved this mystery because the physical thing, the paper, held the clues. So as we all move into this so-called paperless world, what kind of trail are we leaving behind? What secrets will our digital files hold for the historians of the future? What's going to be their watermark? Something to think about.